Okay, so welcome back. This is going to be part one of the Tale of Two Brothers campaign. So I spent 21 minutes talking about all the game mechanics in the last video, and I haven't even started the combat yet. So this scenario is probably going to be two parts on its own, because I still haven't even started talking about the strategy regarding playing through campaigns. So we will get through that now, and I'll try cap it off at 15 minutes this time instead of going over. Okay, all right. So the way we want to run it here, right, is that for this scenario here specifically, we just have to kill this fella here and not die ourselves and do it within 18 turns. There are a lot of ways you can play this scenario, right? One way, the most mainstream way, is that you utilize your cavalry units, your horsemen, and deploy them up in the north here, because there's open plains, open fields. You got a couple of villages off here to the right, and one that's really close to the keep. So you got plenty of bases to plenty of places to heal and recover your health, and plenty of room to maneuver for horses. As I mentioned before in the previous video, the horsemen, they have negative terrain modifiers when they're operating in mixed terrain, like forest and whatnot. So trying to deploy them here wouldn't be ideal. So the main strategy usually is to deploy all of your horsemen up north and then deploy the rest of your infantry into the forest here. Now, granted, as I mentioned before, the normal infantry, the spearmen and the bowmen, they get negative terrain movement modifiers. But in terms of combat, if you put an infantry in a forest or a mountain or some of these hills hexes, they actually get defense modifiers. So they operate well in combat. It's just maneuvering takes time, if that makes sense. As the game progresses, I'll be able to illustrate it a little bit better. The exception to this is the footpad, because they're the light infantry, the skirmishers. They just operate well in all of the hexes. Well, not all. River hexes is pretty much negative to almost all units except for the merfolk. Yes, but we don't encounter them here, so we're not going to talk about them. But yes, so that's the big advantage of the light infantry here. Okay, so if you were to play this scenario on the easy difficulty, you could totally just play it normally, where you have all your horsemen go up north, and then you have all the infantry go off to the south here, and you do a double pincer maneuver. And basically, you can assassinate this guy with your horsemen. You just let him deploy his units forward, and as they overextend, you can flank around and then just assassinate and kill him, and that ends it. The problem occurs now if you're playing on the higher difficulty is the campaign situation. As I said before, your units carry over into the next mission. The ones that survive and the ones that have experience. And also your gold, some of it carries over as well. Now these are the strategic considerations in the game. We are not going to be able to finish this campaign if we don't play this and the next scenario in a specific way, because it's very hard. As I said before in part 0, this and on this difficulty, this campaign is very difficult. The strategic considerations we have to have here is that by the end of this scenario, we need to have at least 2 units that are level 2. If we don't have 2 units that are at level 2 or about on the threshold of becoming level 2, we are not going to survive the next scenario. And if we don't survive the next scenario, we can't finish the campaign. We're just going to be stuck. It's important that we get experience units and that we fight this guy's units to get that experience before we kill him. Yeah, that's important. We have to build the army basically in terms of experience. So that's the strategic considerations for this scenario here. We need to get at least 2 units to level 2 or close to level 2. Now, I've already explained one strategy regarding deploying your units here. The other way you can do it is that you just concentrate your whole army and maneuver them through the forest here. You have to be careful with the horsemen, because if you put horsemen in forests, they're going to be very vulnerable and you are going to lose them very easily. But it's very possible to just concentrate all units in this one hex, not one hex, but this one area here. Let the enemy come towards you and then engage them. And you will have a slight numerical advantage, which will easily win the battle for you. Yeah, so there's that. The big consideration here is the time of day. So if you look over to the right here, you can see the schedule of the time of day. So there's six different time zones, I suppose you could say, regarding the playthrough in this game. So us being humans, most of the human units are what we call lawful. So lawful units operate better in daytime. I think they get 25% extra damage. Or I think it's only damage. I might be wrong. They might get extra defense modifiers. But I'm pretty sure the main one is the damage. So if the humans are fighting in the day, they get a damage buff. If we are going to fight the undead at night, they are going to get a damage buff and we won't. And during times like this right now, where it's the dusk or dawn period, so there's a turn where it's neutral. Neutral units will get buffs to their damage, but for the undead and the humans in this case, we get no added benefits. So it's neutral ground basically at dusk or dawn. So when deploying our units here and trying to maneuver them, ideally we want to start the engagement just as the day is starting. And that way we get a good 3 turns of combat where we have a 25% damage bonus to the undead that doesn't have any. So yeah, you could, but because we're on YouTube and I'm going to be showing it on max difficulty, we're going to take the most aggressive strategy, which not a lot of people play, but I've played it a couple times now and it's worked out pretty well so far. But it could end terribly because, like I said, if I lose this scenario, I just have to restart it all over again and I'll probably have to just re-record everything. So, hell. Yeah, I'll probably do some editing so that you don't have to watch through the whole thing. I'll just capture all the important parts. But basically, the strategy that I'm going for here is that I'm going for this area right here. So as you can see, there's an extra keep here. There's a castle. I'm sorry, there's a keep with 3 castle tiles. So this right here is actually a base. So long as I put my knight feller, my leader unit on this castle tile, I can start recruiting from here, which is a very, it's a closer forward operating base basically to attack this guy. It's dangerous because it's much closer to him, but considering we're already starting with an army, usually in the playthroughs that I've executed the strategy, it works out pretty well. It's pretty fine. The problem with going this aggressive is that we actually engage the enemy at the last turn of nighttime. So we're going to be at a disadvantage for the first turn of combat against the undead, but usually we can hold out, and there's a big reason why regarding the footpads, which I'll get to in a second. But that's the strategy that we're going here for. We're going to rush this middle area right here, get to this castle, and try put our infantry deployed in this forest. That way, when the enemy is going to attack us, they'll be out in open ground, and that will give plenty of targets for our cavalry to engage and knock them out. So, yeah, let's get started with that. So we're just gonna start maneuvering our guys up forward. So here's all our cav units. So we got 3 horsemen and our leader unit, which is a knight who's level 2. This is the unit that you can upgrade the horsemen to if you get enough experience on them. And we're going to try get an extra knight here if possible. Let's just move the rest of the infantry up. So we can't move this fella here because if you recall from the part 0, this is the guy that we just bought. So he doesn't have any actions now. But when we start the next turn, he'll be able to move and whatnot. So yeah. So we've deployed everybody here. We're moving up forward. The problem with this aggressive strategy is that we forego going for the villages, which is where you get your income from. But as you can see here, we're already starting off pretty well. We get 8 gold per turn. We're at 11 right now. And all of our units that are currently deployed, except for this guy here, they're all loyal, so they don't have any upkeep costs. So this is why this aggressive strategy sort of works. We have a lot of innate advantages from the deployment zone that plays it quite well. But yeah, we're gonna forego the income and the economy. Just go straight for the enemy here. So once you've done moving and you have no more units to move, everything's red across the board, you just click the end turn button here and this will pass the turn over. So that's what we're gonna do here. So we click end turn. So okay, I should probably change that. So basically under the preferences, you can change the speed. So I always have it on accelerated speed, but because since I'm teaching the game, basically I better switch that off so that everyone can follow through the combat, especially the combat. It's when it gets really important to visualize all the animations. So I'm going to switch that off because you saw him deploy it really fast. That's not the normal speed. So we've passed the turn over, and he's finished his turn. Now we've passed over to us. So the advantage that we had was that we started off with an army. He had to deploy his. All right. So that's what he did there. He was recruiting basically with all this magic and whatnot. So this is the unit that this is the army that he's built up here. So he's got 2 zombies, a bat, a ghost, skeleton, and 2 ghouls. So I'll just run down the kind of units that he's operating here. The bat and the ghost are basically skirmishers, but they're not infantry. They're flying units. So they're pretty cheap, but they're pretty weak as well. They do, however, have a very high defense rating, so it's very hard to kill them. You have to get in a lot of attacks and get a little bit lucky with your hits, basically. But they don't do that much damage, but they are really annoying because they can fly. As you can see here, we can hover over their units and see how far they move. They don't suffer from a lot of the terrain modifiers regarding to movement, basically. So yeah, these are his skirmisher units. These zombies are corpses. They're dirt cheap, but they don't have good attack. They don't have that many attacks. They move very slow. Not particularly good units. Now, the ones that are scary are the skeletons and the ghouls. So the skeleton is basically comparable to our spearman unit that we have available. It's his basic infantry unit. So yeah, and it has pretty decent attack, especially at night, which we are in right now. But we'll get to them later. And what he has here is the ghouls. Now, the ghouls have a special ability called poison. So basically, if a ghoul manages to get a hit on your unit gets poisoned. And a poisoned unit basically loses hit points at the start of every turn until it reaches to 1, at which point it just stays at 1 hit point. So that's the poison ability here, which we will see come into play. And then as our units start getting poisoned, I'll tell you how the healing and the curing mechanics work. But yeah, this is the common army composition that he has here. So we're going to continue on with our strategy of rushing the middle keep here. So as you can see, all the units are moving a little bit slower. Should have changed that setting earlier. But yeah, here we go. Okay. So we've got all of our light infantry and cav guys over there. So now we start moving the normal infantry up. Okay. All right. So we've moved everything. Nothing else to do. Yeah, nothing else to do. So what's going to happen here is he's going to start deploying his units. A couple of them are going to come over to here. And it's at this point here, if you can see, time of day, we're still going to have a full turn in which he's going to have advantages. Now, here's the plus point regarding the footpads. The footpads are not only our light infantry skirmisher type units. If you can see, they are not lawful. They're actually chaotic, which means that they actually operate better at night. They get the 25% buff at night instead of day. This goes back to what I was talking about, the human faction, is that they have a lot of diverse units. They have answers to pretty much anything and everything. So in this case here, when it comes to fighting the undead, our footpads are basically the stopgap measures. So there are our scouts, our light infantry, our skirmishers, and our defense against the undead at night from this one unit right here. So what we're going to do is that once we get to this keep here, we're going to recruit a whole bunch of footpads, and they're going to hold out for the first turn of the night. And after that's over, as the enemy has already deployed, we'll be in a good position to wipe them out during the daytime. So yeah, let me pass the turn now. So I click end turn. Okay, so now everything's going slower here, so we can see them maneuvering. Okay. So regarding the RNG in this game, for this campaign and this scenario specifically, we can get screwed depending on how the AI decides to deploy its army, because it's different every time. The AI has, like us, a set roster, basically. The recruitment tab that I showed earlier, they have that kind of similar thing. So they only can deploy these many units here. But the composition of the army, that's always different every time, every playthrough. So in this case here, it's not that bad. But 4 skeleton, that's pretty powerful army right there. Plus 3 ghouls. Those are the main threats that we have to deal with here. These Dark Adept fellas, they are actually pretty dangerous as well. They're magical. They have magical attacks basically. They have no melee attacks. It's all range, but we'll get to that in a second here. But this is definitely one of the tougher army compositions that the AI deploys. So, yep, well, doesn't matter. We're already committed to it, so here we go. So, okay, I put my leader character on the castle. The encampment, sorry, keep. I can now have the ability to recruit more units, so that's what we're going to do. And as I said before, for fighting the undead, especially at night, footpads are the answer to our problems. So, okay, I need to wait one more turn to get another guy out, but that's okay. We've got enough here. Oh, I shouldn't have skipped that. Okay, the next time a combat occurs, I'll make sure to show it in detail. Now, we don't really want to commit all of our cavalry straight into this line here because their second wave is going to come in, and if we're fighting at night with cavalry and get stuck into an infantry engagement, they're not going to last that long. So this isolated bat here, we can definitely kill him. So we're going to commit our forces to attack him. One thing that the game allows you to do is that you can always hover over the enemy units to see how far they can move. So if we deploy our cav along this side here, this way, if this hex here can get caught out, but I'm not too concerned about the zombies. Yeah, it's going to take another turn before our infantry catches up. So yeah, we're going to take this fight here. And once again, I forgot to show the tab. Okay, the next combat, I'll explain the tab on the thing. If I definitely put a guy there, he's going to get slaughtered. You know what? Why not? Just to show. So basically, this is how the combat mechanics work. Right, finally get to explain it. Oh my god, it's already 16 minutes. Okay, I will stop the video here, and then we'll continue in the next part, and I'll explain the combat in detail.